Alrighty, Shay, we're now in segment 3, and this is the part of the show where our guests share some wisdom for the viewers and the listeners, and also answer some questions. So if you're watching this live in our Facebook group and you're joining us today watching this episode with Shay, make sure you start popping those questions into the comments now, and in a couple of minutes I'll put them all together and we'll start putting them to Shay. But in the meantime, mate, you are a steel fabricator by trade, so you wanted to share some steel fabrication tips with us, which is fantastic. I've never had that on the show before.
Yeah, sure. So I left school and got into boiler making apprenticeship straight after school. And that just led me through a lot of different industries in engineering. So when it came to building pits, I had a lot of steel experience in regards to how to manipulate steel and build something that was actually nice to look at. So whether it be how to blend stuff back, finishing steel, correcting doors, correcting anything on there, I had the know-how without too much fuss. And some of the ways that I've got a process where I've actually stopped the spring in the door when cutting open cylinders, and it's helped me. It's helped me not spend hours trying to correct that, because I've had times where I went through, cut a door, and she come out that bad. I had to take it off to take it to work, drive a forklift over it, a bit of timber underneath it to try and bend it round, and yeah, it come good. And yeah, I thought, geez, that was a lot of effort to get that back round. But I've since come up with a way that it doesn't spring too bad at all. I found the biggest challenge with steel is if you heat one side, with steel, it'll start to creep back around the side you're heating, so it expands and then shrinks. If you're cutting a door or any part, yeah, basically a door, with a lot of heat, you're going to find it will spring, and you got to use heat to get it back in.
Yeah, and I wouldn't imagine that too many people would have a forklift they could get a hold of to try and get that back in again.
No, I had to take it to work. And the boss was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just got to push this door back in." So I said, "Can you jump on the fork? I'll put this timber here." And yeah, we drove over a couple of times.
Well, that would certainly keep things interesting at work there. So you mentioned before about blending stuff back. What does that mean?
Oh, okay. So in engineering, if you're dealing with stuff that's aesthetically got to look pleasing, and it's so you stop starts with your welding. So if you're welding into welds as opposed to stop and then start right there again, it creates a bit of a mound, and you got to blend that back, or you back set your welding, control your heat, blend your stop starts. If you get stuff like porosity, I'm not too sure if you're aware of the term, but it's basically, it looks like an aero bar in your weld. That's just you've lost gas. It's no good. I hate it because I've been trained to not do that. But if I get anything like that, I take the time to grind that back out, weld it right, blend it back, so it just looks aesthetically pleasing. And so other guys in my can walk by and they can look at it and go, nice, I like that. Because there's nothing worse than having colleagues in the same trade and going, are you a boiler maker?
Yeah. I just came across that term porosity just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, actually, and like an aero bar is exactly the description that the person gave to me when they were explaining it. What are some of the potential outcomes of not grinding an aero bar weld out and redoing it? So if you just did it and just left it, what would be some of the potential things that could go wrong there?
Oh, so with a pit, it's probably not that big of a deal because it's not structural. But something that's structurally engineered, that weld would fail. You'd fail every day of the week. You'd have to grind it out. It could crack. and it's not nice, and can get you in lots and lots of trouble in regards to a business that's putting that kind of stuff out there.
Yeah, right. So I gather then if you were building something like a trailer, then that would be a big no-no for a smoker trailer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, crikey. Okay, now when it comes to tools, what sort of recommended tools do you tell people they should use?
So building pits as such?
For steel fabrication stuff, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. So depending on what you're doing, like 15 amp power for a welder is probably a start. If you can get that in your shed at home, that's a good start, because a lot of good tools, without going three-phase, you can get in 15 amp power. And then when it comes to hand tools, hammer's your best friend, is a boilie, but also a ruler, chalk. Yeah, I got to say, like, my day-to-day, I've got lots of tools, but my day-to-day stuff would have to be a square, a ruler, chalk and a hammer, I suppose, and a little level. Yeah.
Wait, that's kind of funny to hear that, like, with all the technology that we have available these days, that your best friends are still your ruler and your hammer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it'd have to be.
That's beautiful. Anyway. It's real artisan stuff. It's real, traditional. It's good to see.
Yeah, I love blacksmith stuff. I don't do it, but I mean, if I had the time and I wasn't building pits, I would probably play around with the blacksmith stuff, because I just love that stuff.
Yeah. And mate, when it comes to steel grades, tell us about what you prefer to use with Stockyard Smokers in terms of steel grade.
Steel grade? Oh, so 250 grade steel. 250 grade is your standard. Going to 350 is just a hardened steel that's not necessarily needed for pits at all. But I do buy lengths of pipe that's 1/4 inch steel, and yeah, that's where I start with Stockyard. Yeah, can go heavier if people want heavier. Like, I mean, I just came across a bit of line pipe through a civil site, and that's close to 10 mil wall, and yeah, that ain't going to be a pit on a stand. That'll be trailer pits.
Yeah. Now, speaking of trailer pits, we just had a question come through here, but I'll pop it up on the screen, but you might want to reach out to this guy in a direct message. William has just put up here, how much would it cost to make a smoker trailer? I need one cheap. Now, I realise that that's probably a conversation best had in private, but what sort of work goes into building a trailer smoker that people like William who would want a trailer smoker? What sort of considerations do they need to have there when they are planning what they want before they approach a builder?
So generally, I like to know what they want out of one. So is it going to be a pit only with wood storage, or is it going to be a pit with sinks, taps, hot water systems, and gas burners at the front, etc. So these can be as simple as a pit on a trailer to a full-blown, commercial kitchen. So I like to start to hear where they're at and what they want out of one, because a lot of people, they come to me with, I want this, and this, and I said, no problem, this is the price, and they go, okay, I don't want that. So like to know where they're at and what they want out of one, and then I do help them decide and get to a point where they're happy with that, and they'll get that best version of that. And yeah,
that's awesome, man. That's some good advice there. A lot of people sort of tick all the boxes and then go, ooh.
Yeah. Wow, that's 30 grand. No, maybe not.
Yeah. The little weekend hobby project suddenly gets a lot more real.